glad that you joined us. And I've got my eyes on the YouTube chat as well. Hopefully, I make sure that I follow that to the best of my ability. So I will be watching for that. And let me make sure I have it. I said I do before yep, there it is. Okay. So let me get this situated on my screen. And so welcome. I see Damon has his hand up. So before I even say anything further, let me go ahead and ask you to unmute, Damon, and fire away. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Hey, how are you?
Doing pretty well. I didn't think I'd be able to make it today, but I made it. Really interesting class. Loved the material. And I loved how you presented the new covenant as sort of a remake of Deuteronomy's greatest hits.
Yeah. And by the way, before just on that point, as I said, I just focused on, I've taught an entire series on the new covenant and Deuteronomy, but this wasn't that. So I just only wanted to focus on that one phrase, really. So I didn't get a chance to really get into it, but.
So what's interesting about that, I want to connect two different thoughts, but what's interesting about Jeremiah is it looks like he's not talking about a completely new thing. He's talking about a renewed thing. Because in Deuteronomy, it was supposed to be on the heart to begin with, except the way Jeremiah is explaining it, it obviously wasn't. And so I want to talk a little bit about how that happened, what happened, and what we can learn from that.
Well, just before you get into it, it sounds like a pretty lengthy exposition. Let me just say this. The one thing I would add is I hear people say it's a very popular view to say that the new covenant is really not a new covenant, but a renewed covenant. And while I follow what you said about Jeremiah and Deuteronomy, I agree. I've taught that. However, the language in Jeremiah, although that's very popular view that it's really not a new covenant, but it is a renewed covenant, that is not supported by the Hebrew, right? So it says, if you translate it very literally, I just want to get this on the table, it does say a new covenant, a new. The word there means absolutely new. And the thing about it is that you also have to think about the idea that it says not like the covenant that I made with their fathers. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that in. And now I'll shut up now.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I appreciate that interjection. I do think it's important. I'm not saying that that's what the text says, but the reason why I'm saying it is also a renewed, even though it is brand new,
right,
is because I see a direct connection, and I see that in two ways. The other thing that I wanted to bring in on the table and just expound on, it'll take me like maybe 2-3 minutes. So I've got to set a time limit on myself.
All right.
Is this idea of another prophet like Moses, which you've also taught on. So in Deuteronomy 18, Moses says, okay, there's going to be another prophet like me, and you'd better listen to him or else. In the end of Deuteronomy, chapter 34, it says there's never been another prophet like Moses since that time. And as you and I both know, that was inserted by an editor long after the time of Moses.
Yep.
So what I think by connecting these two thoughts, a new covenant with this idea of another prophet like Moses, is that basically this other prophet like Moses is going to be the one who institutes that new covenant. And to kind of expound on that a little bit, I think there's a very interesting pattern of when Moses made a covenant with the people versus what they had just experienced in Egypt. Okay? Because what they just experienced in Egypt, if you look at Ezekiel chapter 20, was they were rebelling against God. They were not worshiping God. God called them to repentance. He made a covenant with them, and they didn't stick with it very long. They rebelled against that covenant almost immediately. I think what we're seeing in the time of Josiah is the same exact thing, where Josiah, because of his heart, is trying to make a renewed covenant with the people. But because of what they just experienced in the time of King Manasseh, they were rebelling against God. They didn't stick with it very long. As Jeremiah described it, they turned to him in pretense. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So I think if we're looking for what Jeremiah foretells as a new covenant, where it really is written on the heart, number one, I think we can expect right before that a period of rebellion. The same thing that happened right before the covenant with Moses, right before the covenant in Jeremiah's day. I think we can expect one like Moses to basically be saying, turn to God with your whole heart. And I think there's a danger of people doing it in pretense.
Yeah.
So I wanted to lay that out there, kind of that pattern of what we should expect from one, the one who brings that new covenant, the one like Moses, whom we haven't seen yet.
Well, let me ask you this.
Jesus talked about a new covenant.
Sorry, go ahead.
One more sentence. Jesus talked about a new covenant, but he didn't make it with Israel and with Judah. So I don't think that was the one yet. I think it's still future. Go ahead.
Some would argue that he did, in that he says in two places in Matthew, where he says, I've come not for this group, but for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So some would say that argues for that he is trying to institute that new covenant. But that's not really my field so much as your point that I wrote down. So if we have everything that you just covered about a new prophet instituting a new covenant, what I find interesting is that the language of what is this prophet? You know, a lot of people look at Deuteronomy 18 and they go, hey, it's Joshua. He's the next guy, you know, and I just don't buy any of that. But some people do. But here's what I find interesting is that the language is put forward in several prophetic texts. So you have, particularly in Jeremiah. So here we've got Jeremiah talking about this covenant. He's actually talking very specifically about a new covenant, Jeremiah 31 through 34. But in Jeremiah 1, it's this same exact, in other words, Deuteronomy 18 and Jeremiah 1 look a lot alike. Would you agree? So
yes.
you have the exact description of, I will put my words in your mouth. That's not the only place we see it. We see it in a text I read today. We see it in Isaiah 59:20. So it could be, and this is just a quick question for you, and then I want to get other people as well. But you can, if you can do this sort of briefly, do you see the prophet like Moses of Deuteronomy 18 as a singular figure, in other words, does that text point to a singular figure, or is it a series of prophetic figures in your view?
I think there's more than one. And I think Jeremiah is a type of that, but because he himself did not make that new covenant, I think he's only partially that. He's not the ultimate one that makes that new covenant.
Okay.
But he's definitely a type.
Okay. So he's one in a line of prophets, you might say. So just for clarity's sake, you would look at Deuteronomy 18 as Moses is saying, I will raise up a prophet like you, but that could be multiple prophets in any given generation. Is that right?
Yes. I think it's a specific pattern that we should expect of a covenant maker. And I don't think there are very many of them. I think Jeremiah was one example. Jesus, for those who are Christian, would have been another. He was a covenant maker. But I don't think we've seen the last one yet.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Yeah, it's sort of it certainly is a fun study, particularly when you take Deuteronomy 18 and then you look at other prophets or people that we recognize as prophets, and you say, okay, well, I see that, and quite often they speak on behalf of God. I see James is in the room now. We had a brief conversation yesterday. He's been gone, but you know, you talk about these figures who would speak ko-amar, thus says the Lord. You know, and that kind of, it's almost like it's a prophetic style that some of us have been studying for quite some time, and it's only evident among the true prophets, if you will. So, hey, good stuff, Damon. I appreciate you, man. Thanks for showing up. I appreciate it. Dr. James Tabor, I'm going to hit the unmute. How are you? Welcome. Let me see. Hold on. There we go.
There we go. I just have a minute. I'm in the middle of this Paul conference, and they're just starting. We had a little lunch break, so I mainly just wanted to say hello.
Okay.
I do have some views on the prophet like Moses. We used to call it the pro like Mo.
Yeah.
So if you want to get into jargon, you could enjoy that humor.
Yeah.
And anyway, in another time, I would like to share some of my thoughts on that, but mainly just wanted to see you all.
Well, one quick point before you go. In the chat, I noticed before I started my teaching, several were talking about this NINT course that you're participating in. Is it too late for people to join?
Oh,
or is
no.
Can you, before you go, put the link in this chat?
Now. It's real easy. No, you own it for life. You also get a bunch of free courses with it, all kinds of other little perks. So you don't have to do it live. Definitely a third of the people are live. The other 2/3 watch it later.
Okay.
So I'll give you my evaluation later, but I'll put the link in.
And
so take care, everybody.
One quick thing, do you teach live today or yours?
I teach live tomorrow.
Okay, tomorrow. Okay, good. So
no,
nobody leave.
We were told to not read papers and to be informal and not dumb it down, but don't use jargon. Don't act like you're reading an academic paper.
Right.
I will say this, we've only had 2 so far. One of them did not follow that, in my opinion.
All right.
It doesn't mean it's not good.
Yeah.
Anyone in this audience, I guarantee you, could follow it fine.
Right.
And probably Bart's wide audience too, because those are lifelong people that have been questing and studying like you all have. Anyway, but we've only seen 2. I can't wait for the others. Paula Friedrichsen is my favorite. I would buy the course just to hear her.
Yeah.
She absolutely is the best Paul scholar in the world, I think. So.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Hey, man, have a wonderful day. Thanks, James.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Dr. Tyler.
Hey, what's happening?
What's happening, brother?
I just want to mention something that's on my mind when I talk to a lot of these people. Everyone gets into the eschatology and figuring all this stuff out. How have you followed the 10 Commandments today? How have you done the will of God? I know that it's all this stuff is great shit to look at, pardon my French, but how did you treat your neighbor? How did you love people? And you get so involved in all these discussions, and I listen to the scholars. I've done it since 1972.
Yeah.
But what about love? And today could be your Armageddon. You could die today. And it doesn't matter what you understood about the eschatology of Daniel or John, the Revelation. It matters how did you treat one another and how did you love one another?
Yeah.
And I'm just saying, I love listening to all this, but don't forget, it's about love. It's about following those 10, and that's the faith. And I feel preachy because I've listened to a lot of the other, not about us today. Yeah, there was some of it, but I've listened to a lot of these things over the years, and I'm writing my book about it. And it, it gets to the point of like, okay, it's how did I treat that woman across the street when she needed help and I was late for work?
Yeah.
Those I think about. How did I treat that person that pulled out in front of me?
But just as a question, though, you also spend time studying these things too. So, like we did the class today, but to your point, it was about the heart of the matter, and a lot of that. I get it. I get it, man. You know, look, we
Sure.
spend a lot of energy, probably wastefully, thinking about trying to crack the code and,
Yeah, yeah.
what's Daniel's 70th week.
Yeah,
And, you know,
and it's fascinating. I love it, but I don't think that that's the most important thing. Meditating on the commandments, the
yeah,
Shema, understanding and enjoying the Sabbath, all those things. How I live my life has become much more important. Maybe it's because I just became a senior citizen,
yeah, I got you.
and the light at the end of the tunnel is all of a sudden a lot brighter. The
It's a
other end.
train, man. It's a train.
It is. And I wanted to say, I thought this was a great discussion today, as always. And, you gave us a lot to think about, but I always return to the roots of my faith and, how I treat the people around me. And, I haven't always been a good person. I'm
Yeah.
being honest, and that's what I reflect on, is to be a better person. And,
Hey, I agree with your preaching. In fact, I think it's important, but also think, because I've had people, I mean, obviously we've done whole series on the 10 Commandments. So yeah, I agree. I think we should reflect on those things too.
yeah.
But I just didn't, I was just making sure you weren't saying, well, I mean, the class
No.
I got you.
No, I'm speaking to myself because, like I said, writing my book, unfortunately, I write about subjects and I put them away, and I'm trying to piece the puzzles together on the profundity of faith. That's the name of my book. And, I've written 1,500 pages. And I can't, I love Joe Dell, but I can't put out a book like Joe Dell. I'm shooting for 300 pages. So I'm trying to synopsize. And one thing that comes up is the importance of how we treat one another, and the ascendance of the soul. It's love, it's caring, and in the right way, love. And I believe the commandments give us the foundation to what is true love. Love is a very, very complex thing. It's a verb, and it's a lot of. And so for me, the bigger things come out as, how did you follow these 10?
Yeah.
The ones I cared to write in stone. There's others, I believe, but the ones he cared to write in stone.
Right.
To do with those. And anyways, I thought it was a great class today, and there's a lot of really good discussions going on, but I want to say that a lot of these things are almost impossible to tell a prophet like Moses. And as you remember, there was a thought of 3 messiahs coming in the future, and there's been all thoughts that I've considered, but what it comes down to is okay, that's great, Dave, but how you doing? What are you doing today?
Yeah.
It's like I say to my employees, I love you guys. You're brilliant, but what are you doing for me today? How are you going to make me money? Making money for God. I mean, did you do his will on this earth? Are you his instruments of peace? Are you his speaker on this earth? And yeah,
you sound like Paul. You sound like, I mean, I am teaching some New Testament text. Let me tell you why. Because you just said you can talk with the tongue of angels, you can discuss Daniel, but without love. See, you're just like you don't even mean to be Paul. Look at you, Paul.
Yeah. I all I'm going to tell you is this for me, that I follow Jesus out of Christianity.
Yep.
Wait, you got a video on that, don't you?
I do. Yeah. I'm going to have to get Seth to make us a T-shirt on that. Wouldn't that be cool?
But the point is, the historical Jesus, is brilliant, and I think he's one of the greatest teachers in the world. He impacted 2 billion people in the wrong way sometimes, but that's because other people took over his message. Kind of what happened to Moses's message. Some people got involved and kind of fixed it a little. And we got the Moses scroll though. Thank you, Almighty One, for giving us that. And like I said, I'm really looking forward to some of the other discussions in this series, because I think it really does open it up, and that these people were more close than we thought. I love that part.
Yeah, I do too.
Listen, I've spoken more than enough, but hey, brother, thank you.
Hey, man, thank you. My best to all those assembled at the Tyler clan, whether they're there or next door. So, all right. Thank you. Nikita, how are you, sister? Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. I am richly blessed. Thank you for that
Wonderful.
nice class that you gave. It was great. Only bad news I have for you is that I'm taking steps to have you arrested.
All right, I'm ready. I think I'm ready. I got the door locked here. So who you sending? My daughter's a cop too. So
Well, you know what? She might be the perfect one.
all right.
She might be the perfect. Julia B can attest to this. We had classes past Wednesday, and some of the things you had said before I said, but today, a lot of the stuff that you came, I'm like, why is this man in my house? And why is he in my business?
That's right. Hey,
I
heard you.
You must have. And you know, the things of the spirit that no one knows or very few know, and they come back to you. It's like the Torah of your heart when it meets the Torah on the page.
Right.
It's nothing but an explosion. A couple of weeks ago, Brother Dave, and Patty, in one of the Friday nights, Dave said, "What does the Most High care about?"
Right.
And it has been on my mind all this time. And when something's nagging me like that, I got to put something to paper. I released it 3 weeks ago. That's what I did. But the Most High was like, "It's not complete. It's not finished."
Right.
So when you started today talking about how love. And what Dave was just saying about love, it was not so much love. I'm one of those people who don't believe in unconditional love because that can lead to abuse.
Yeah.
Every love has some type of parameters or some things that you should be wary of not to do to another person.
Right.
So for me, everything, bar none, everything goes back to the garden. Everything. Because it was the most. Julia said this in the class a couple of weeks ago, that she sees the Most High as complex simplicity. And I love the phrase because it fits him so perfectly. When you get to the bottom, when you get to the line, when you get to the end, it was the complex simplicity of everything that happened in that garden.
Right.
What is the one thing that the Most High gave us that he will not take? But that's the only thing we can use to serve him, to praise him with, to sacrifice to him. And that's our free will. That free will comes from the purity of your soul's treasure. Because, I mean, like I said before, you can abuse someone you love, but when you have free will and that motivations and the agendas that come from that, the Most High gave them everything. They needed nothing. They already had dominion over the whole earth. But when the temptation in order to have their own free will came about, it wasn't so much, it is power in a sense, but if I can exert my own free will to do anything and everything I want to do without question, they jumped at it, even though they already had dominion over the whole earth.
Yeah.
So when we sacrifice, and the sacrificing of cows and lambs and bulls and those things of that nature, that had a price to it too. But the free will, if you can sacrifice your want, the disobedience to line up with the Most High's righteousness in obedience, that is the highest caliber that you could ask for. That's the highest thing you can do for him.
Line it up.
The one thing that we had, he won't take.
Yeah. Hey, that's some good stuff. So you have a Bible study during the week where you were part of, and you guys were talking about these subjects. Is that what I understand?
Yes.
Okay.
And it just so happens, you know, some of the script, and it's so funny. I'm sorry, Lord, forgive me. It's so orchestrated that Jeremiah 31 was one of the topics of conversation this past Wednesday. And also, it was the leading topic of one of the lessons that I was already preparing that, like I said, I wanted to release 3 weeks ago, but the Most High was like, hold up, wait a minute, it's not finished.
Right.
And you know how it is when you're writing, you get brain block?
I do know that.
And you're like, why can't I finish this thought? I'm trying to wrap this up. I want to do it such and such a time. And the Most High is like, whose is this? Mine or yours? You know, you're like, it's going to come when it comes. I can't force it. If I push it, things will go left.
That's right.
And then if you release it too soon, you wish you hadn't.
Yeah, writer's block is a real thing, and sometimes you have to get up and walk around. I'll do that a lot of times. I'll walk out of the office and just go around the block several times, and I have a certain route that I like to walk, and sometimes it helps. And then you come back, you know, you can pray and meditate while you're out, and you come back and you think, okay, I think I got it now. So, hey, good stuff. Good stuff.
No, you brought it all out, and Dave's question, like I said, when he's like, "What does the Most High care about?" Giving him money does nothing. What does that do? I mean, giving him cows and lambs. Now, if there was a place and a time for a sacrifice, because in those nomadic times, a lamb, a cow, a goat, or whatever meant more then. But like it's like a millionaire. $1,000 is a sacrifice for me. $1,000 is not a sacrifice for him.
Right.
So back in those nomadic times, yes, a goat, a lamb, or whatever was a sacrifice. It really was. But it was meant to be for us personally with the Most High personally, as Dave was saying before. Like, who did you love? Did you follow this? And the part of the scripture that says that you shall bind this to your hands as frontlets to your eyes.
Yeah.
It could be physical. I mean, I understand those who say it is, but my take on that is anything you put your hand to has to go through his law, has to go through his teaching, has to go through his obedience.
Right.
So I can't use this hand that I praise him with to abuse you with.
And that's good.
Anything that I put before my eyes has to go through his word. You're so encapsulated by the word and his teachings, the 10, the Decalogue. You're so encapsulated by that nothing you put your hands to, nothing you put your mind to, nothing you put your words to is not filtered through them to others. Because once you do that, you're outside of his will.
All right. All right. Hey, good stuff as always, my sister.
My heart to yours, and quit peeking through my windows. I don't appreciate that. It makes me
All
nervous.
right. I understand. I'll try to be more careful next time.
Appreciate you. Bye-bye.
All right, Nikita. Have a beautiful week.
You too.
All right. Todd and Angel. How are you? Shabbat Shalom. Wait, let's see. Now.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Shabbat Shalom, brother. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Oh, doing good. Something you read in Jeremiah earlier kind of brought something to mind since you was bouncing back and forth with the New Testament. When he says, I will put my teaching into their innermost being and inscribe it upon their hearts. Then I will be their God, they shall be my people. No longer will they need to teach one another and say to one another, He the Lord. Mm-hmm. That just reminded me of when Yeshua said, call no man teacher, or father, or rabbi, or any of that, and he even said that you would be taught by the Father.
Right.
And that just kind of hit me when you read that this morning. That's the first thing that popped in my head. And another one in the same thing, for I will forgive their iniquities and remember their sins no more. Yeah. Nothing in there about sacrifices. And that also kind of makes me think, well, that's not what the church preaches. Yeah. In order to have your sins forgiven, something else has to happen. Exactly. Which brings me to another point, because I kept reading down, and this really, I was blown away with this one. I'm sure I've read it before, just how things click. If these laws should ever be annulled by me, only then would the offspring of Israel cease to be a nation before me for all time. If the law should ever be annulled by me, well, as far as I'm concerned, that kind of takes Paul's letters to the shredder, don't it? Because he teaches anti-Torah. I know some people don't believe that, but that's just that just kind of struck me kind of funny there. Well, and that is a very strong point. I think most of the people who are with us today probably began their journey in Christianity in one form or another. Some are still there in one form or another. Right. And my personal faith is really based in the Hebrew Bible, and that's obviously, most people know that. But I tell you, there are some really incredible things which line up perfectly, in my view, with the fundamental foundational teachings in the Hebrew Bible. There are some that I have difficulty getting in line with those. And for me, I think for many people, the first of those would be attributed to Paul. I remember for years, I really struggled with this. I mean, I was scared to death because I'm talking years and years ago, I started seeing that Paul, and I was scared to say it, I didn't know how to put it, but Paul just didn't jive anymore. It didn't line up, at least in my understanding. So I remember when I first
I said, well, Peter said he's hard to understand too, so I'm going to go with Peter, and I'm just going to put him up. And then, over time, I recognize that he's a man of his time. This is not my field. It's not really even my interest. My interest isn't even in Second Temple Judaism, to be honest. So I see people like if they say, well, the New Testament or rabbinic literature, all of that stuff feels really late for me. Like I'm just an early ancient kind of guy. I want to go back. And that's kind of what I've wanted to do with this class, even though, I pulled in some of these other things like Paul. So I know you and I have had a few conversations and you've let a little bit of this out. Your view on Paul right now is, if you could kind of sum it up, Todd, where would you find yourself in that?
You mean as far as a complete opinion or whatever?
Yeah, and I mean, you don't have to get too personal, but just kind of, do you consider it to be legitimate and part of the faith, or?
Well, start off, he did have a major impact. I mean, look at the churches. They're based off the Pauline deal.
Yeah.
He did say it was his gospel.
Right.
The gospel. His gospel. That I have a problem with. But I guess in a nutshell, the way I look at it is, you don't have to have him for salvation. Right. You don't have to have his letters to be in the club, basically.
Yeah.
Especially when, if he was so simple as a lot of people say, well, no, he did the law, and others say, well, no, he didn't do the law, and this, that, and the other. If somebody is that confusing, then there's no need of him, basically, because it's confusion.
Yeah.
But you look at what Yeshua taught, which was the exact opposite of what Paul taught. But if you go by what he taught, you'll find the exact same thing in the Hebrew Bible, same things that he taught. And it's so for me, for as far as Paul's concerned, I don't look down on somebody if they like Paul and everything like this. That's fine.
Yeah.
But it's just for me, I don't need him to make sense of anything, because it's just going to add confusion.
You're fine. You're fine without him, is what you're saying.
Exactly. I don't see a need for him, just for the simple fact that he does sow confusion.
Yeah.
And it really does. I mean, the man was a genius at talking out both sides of his mouth. I mean, in seriousness, I mean, he really was. You could say the same thing at the beginning of a verse, and by the end of the verse, he's opposite of it. And so that to me is a little. And people try to delve into it and study that and everything. And we've gone through his letters line by line.
Oh, yeah.
We studied every one of them. And we did it with an open mind. We didn't do it with, we're going to find a way to make this guy, No, we did it with an open mind. And that's when we both just came to the conclusion, don't need him.
I'm going to bring other people up too, but I just want to drill down a little bit further, because here's what I hear sometimes. Even though I'm teaching primarily from the Hebrew Bible, I'll sometimes get correspondence where somebody goes, well, what do you do about Galatians or Ephesians or Colossians or Philippians? Why do you, and I very kindly answer that. And here's what inevitably people think. Well, Ross, if you only sat down and listened to me, I would share with you how to make sense of this, how to make Paul make sense, because it's got to be a defect in my mentality, and it's got to be something wrong with me. Like, that's kind of the view, is that, well, you certainly haven't put it all together like I have. And I think I never want to be like that with people, because, and I certainly wouldn't say, well, I've considered all your views, dear sir, dear ma'am, and I've considered them wanting. Because I don't necessarily think that, but I have considered quite a few views and quite a bit. And for me, I think that it's important that we recognize that there are billions, literally billions of people on the planet who are exposed to these ideas, the message of Torah on the heart and so forth, through a version of that song made popular by the artist Paul. And so that's not what I'm going to typically do every Saturday, as you guys know. But from time to time, I want to bring some of that element in because I think it's important. What I found so helpful for me 30 years ago was that someone started saying things like, well, if you orient your faith to Jerusalem instead of Rome, you'll find much more in line, and so all those kind of things. So
yeah.
Anyway, I appreciate your take, and I think that it's important that you guys that are with us here today, we're coming from all different perspectives. So it's interesting to me to kind of get those perspectives. Dave came on early and made a couple of comments that, he's right. I mean, in the bottom line is, what are we doing? Like, are we learning just to learn, or are we learning to live our life according to these teachings? And I think that's what we really understand is the heart of the matter. That's the whole point. But in the meantime, there are all these other cool side roads we can go down.
Well, you just mentioned something a minute ago that I find really interesting, because I get with some people once in a while. When you said, we're here, if you listen to me, Ross, I'll explain Paul to you so you can understand him. My question to that person would be, why would he need to be explained if he's supposedly easy to understand?
Well, Peter said it was hard. So you have to crack the code is what most people think. But, I'm
not interested in cracking the code. If you can't make sense out of it when you read it right out of the Bible, then.
Yeah.
Well, the problem is when we studied Paul, we made sense of it. He was teaching exactly the opposite, especially in Galatians, exactly the opposite of the Torah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's certainly some difficult things to get by. Now, again, what I hear is people who still embrace that, and I know you've heard this as well. I mean, I've said it. I've said this. Well, it's just because you don't understand him in his historical context. And actually, Paul, if you understand him as a Pharisee of the Pharisees, you must understand the Mishnah and the Talmud. And yeah. Well, here's the truth. I'm not a Pharisee, and I don't ascribe to many of the Pharisaic teachings. Doesn't mean I have to fight someone who is theologically aligned with modern-day Phariseeism. But I just don't buy it. I mean, I'm not so concerned, because I don't think the Hebrew Bible is, with angels and, and all of those sorts of otherworldly affairs and the things that came into the faith. I want to go back. I want to say, how far back can we trace this, and what's that original view? So Anyway, hey, good insight, guys. Stick around. I know you'll probably have something else. I'm going to bring Betty up. Hello, Betty. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. How are you?
Oh, wonderful. Ross, I can't tell you how much I loved this class today.
Well, good.
It just spoke, well, I guess I'm, anyway, just a little bit emotional here, because anything to do with the heart to me, is how we have to live.
Right.
And one of the things that first struck me years and years and years ago when I was reading the first 5 books, I got to Deuteronomy, and I noticed that the language is so very different. For example, in the first chapter alone, there are at least 10 references. Here I go, I'm counting like you do. 10 references to the Lord your God, or the Lord our God, and even in the Moses scroll.
Yeah.
There's all this at the end of each of the 10 commandments. I am Elohim, your Elohim.
Right.
That to me is a love relationship. And I just think that's how we need to live our lives, just like David said, and some other people. We love our God, and we love our neighbor as ourselves. But the bottom line is love. It's the internal. It's inside. We can do all these wonderful rituals and whatever, and I do some, but they are the purpose is to connect us to the inside.
Right.
And I just think that your class was amazing. It was very inspiring, and I totally needed it today. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, Betty. And of course, we've known each other for quite some time. And, you know, there's one side of me that you'll understand. And I think most people in this group listening to me and listening to us understand. And that is, even though I'm no longer in a certain place, it doesn't mean that I still can't benefit from certain things that I had in the past or that I believed. And in fact, I saw, and I'm only going by the name, the YouTube sign on, and the name is Sticky Peculiar. I just don't know your other name, but that's the name you want to go by. So Sticky says that most of us would not be here if it's not for Paul. And that is a true statement. And even though some people want to say that they no longer, you know, like I've left all that and I'm done with it. I tell you, I don't know if something's happening to me as I get older, and I'm not getting grouchy like I want to fight, but what's happening to me is this. I'm watching people who, and I'm going to exaggerate here, who were a fundamentalist Christian, let's say a year, 5 years, 10 years ago, and they have now become so knowledgeable and so brilliant, and now they dismissed and they threw all that out, and Christianity is bad, and the New Testament is riddled with errors, and they just boast and brag and make fun of. I'm just about fed up with that. And the reason I'm just about fed up with it is because it is simply unfair. And it's particularly unfair when people are seeking God through those texts and they are where we were, just like Sticky Peculiar said.
Right.
That's where we started. And I'm reminded of Ezekiel 34 every day of my life now. In fact, I would recommend that people read that text today, just in your own time. But it's this idea of the sheep abusing other sheep. Like the shepherd is really getting on certain sheep. Like I brought you to clean water, and you're going to muddy up the water with your filthy feet. I mean, anyway, I'm preaching to the choir, but I just keep going to this idea that I think we have to go back and say, hey, why don't we extend a hand and help people along? So my class today, I did want to bring in some of those fantastic verses. Look, you look at Matthew 23 and Mark chapter 12 and Luke chapter 10, those passages that I read. If anybody can't say amen to that the problem's not with that text. The problem's with them, right? I had, and then I'll be quiet, Betty, but I wanted to say I had someone left a comment on one of our YouTube videos, and I really don't take the time to read them all as I should, not regularly, not timely, I guess, but this person was upset, bless their heart, that I read from a New Testament text, and they said, anyone who would go with that uninspired text and quote it, bye-bye. That was their comment, bye-bye.
Oh, so sad.
And I'm like, well, bye, I mean, you're not hurt. Are you hurting my feelings? Anyway, see, maybe I am getting grouchy as I get older. I don't know.
Well, I don't think that's grouchy. I mean, they said bye. You're just saying bye-bye.
There back. You go. That's the way to make it sound better. I like the way you said it better.
There is one other thing, and now I can't believe it just slipped my mind. I guess I am. I'm more than a senior citizen.
No, I talked too long. I just didn't shut up.
No, no, it'll come back. Yeah,
when it comes back, shoot your arm up again.
Okie dokie. I will. Thank you. And thanks again for the class. I really did appreciate it.
Thank you, my friend.
You're
Shabbat
welcome.
shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Okay. Miriam. Let's see. There you are. Hey, Miriam. Shabbat shalom. Wait. Ask to unmute. Let me see if I can hear you.
Shabbat shalom.
I got you. You get a little closer to the microphone, but I can hear you.
Okay, let me go that. Because Angel helped me get a new microphone, and I'm happy to use it.
All right, I can hear you. How are you?
Shabbat shalom to all. Wonderful class as usual, and I just strive on each one of them and build from them. Before Torah was in the church. I was a minister and a teacher and taught nothing but New Testament. And It's all still in me. All I do now with Torah is build on it and grow from that. That was, where I started. You don't want to kill the roots. Old saying. You don't want to throw the baby out with the bath water.
Right.
So you want to just continue in life as long as you can. And Dave talked about he's a senior. Well, welcome to the club.
That's right, baby.
And say too. So, in good company. And I thank you guys for it. But I love the teaching. I left the church. All these so wonderful people despise me now. So how can you love your brother, your neighbor, and hate your brother?
Yeah.
And that is, it's like I don't have a family. You guys are my family, and I cherish it since 2009, and never look back and don't regret it.
Amen.
But one point is that you talked a lot about the circumcised heart, circumcision of the heart. And I went to the Webster. I have a Bible dictionary, but by the time I was trying to get it, you guys had already started to run over here from the bookcase and get okay, and just go with Webster for now. But it kind of told me that it's a cutting of something forced in from it. Well, even in Psalms, where it says, cut away the forced. No, not Psalms. Jeremiah 4.
Yeah, that's right.
Cut away the foreskins of the heart. Circumcise yourselves and remove the foreskin of the heart. Exactly. Okay. And then I thought, okay, well, we didn't hear about a contrite heart. And it hit me, and I looked that up, and it talks about having or showing deep sorrow from having done wrong.
Yeah.
Repent. And Psalms 51 says,
Amen.
As well,
yeah,
about that the sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart, thou wilt not despise.
Right.
And I'm trying to figure out, okay, I can understand the contrite part with that definition, but then you remove a foreskin from the heart, is what does exactly how you do that? Or maybe someone needs to hear it like me and to get a better way of the circumcised heart you taught on today?
You have asked a wonderful question, and you really began to give the answer yourself. So here's the way I would view it. First of all, if we start at the beginning with Deuteronomy 10, verse 16 says, for us to circumcise our heart. Well, what does that mean? And your question is, well, how do I do that really? I mean, what does that mean? And what does it mean to circumcise? And how does that relate with what we know about circumcision of the flesh? And then Deuteronomy 30, verse 6 says, God's going to circumcise our heart and the heart of our... So you have to wonder, does that mean that we're supposed to start the process and maybe make an attempt to circumcise our own heart, whatever that is, and then God's going to help us, the people like me who maybe didn't do it right or whatever. So that's the first thing I would say. But one part that I think is very important to understand, when you started bringing in, Miriam, because of your study, like things like passages like Psalm 51, create within me, this idea of a contrite heart. And we also get this idea in the latter part of Isaiah. What does that mean? If we think of the idea of circumcision, I want you to think of the idea of exposing, right? You're exposing, making bare. It's sort of the same thing in my mind as this idea of a contrite. You're opening yourself up to God. You're being sensitive, and this sounds really spiritual, but I think it's supposed to be this way. You're being sensitive to God's touch. You're being sensitive to God. Everything about this is about opening ourselves up to God and His ways. Now, an interesting thing where it talks in the Torah, in the Pentateuch, in Deuteronomy, about impress these things on your children. The word there in Hebrew is to, like, you take a pen and you incise, you like make little prick marks, in the heart. That's the idea. It's how do you get it on the inside, like really, really get it on the inside. And I think that's our goal. I think all of us here are working on the Deuteronomy 10 part. We are all of us here, I think, hopeful that God will step in and do the Deuteronomy 30 part. And somehow our two efforts will meet. God will certainly be the one that's successful. But remember, if you look at Deuteronomy 30, it says that God will ultimately circumcise our hearts so that we will love the Lord our God with all our heart, with all our soul, with all our everything, and so that we may then live. So all of these efforts, our attempt to expose and make sensitive our heart to God through our attempt to love Him and follow His ways, all of this is metaphorically opening ourselves up for the Word of God. And I think this goes to Dave's point earlier. We can learn all sorts of things. I mean, look, I know that many of you, and I know many of you are very, very knowledgeable. And I could probably win certain hands of Bible trivia as you could. But to learn just for the sake of knowing is not at all what we're supposed to be doing. I like to say we are learning for the purpose of living a life worthy of God. I mean, that's, again, it doesn't matter how much you know, or you can know Hebrew and Greek, and I can know the letters of Clement. I can know all of the church fathers, and let's say I memorize all of that stuff, rabbinic literature, but none of that really matters. It's just like the point I wanted to make today, circumcision of the flesh, a procedure that your parents may have done for the guys, or you might have done later in life, does not necessarily put us in the right place with God. It requires more than that. Hopefully, Miriam, that helps a little bit, but I think it's really about laying the heart bare and being sensitive to God. Does that make sense at all? Maybe you have other ideas.
Yes, excellent. one other point or two. You made the statement, chase after righteousness. I love that.
Say it again. I said
And
what?
Chase after righteousness.
Yes.
Okay, but not religion.
That's
it's
right.
Not about that. And I know a lot of my relatives, just go through the religious rituals and do this and that, certain holidays, whatever. And so, that was a great point, and it impressed me as well today. And one last thing, for those that are lonely or live alone or not having a whole lot of people in your life, Yahweh Hashem put in my heart and said, when you're alone, you with me.
Beautiful.
So he's there always. You're not alone.
I agree.
That is what I live by. Shabbat shalom to all. Thank you.
Hey, it's good to have you in the family, Miriam.
Thank you.
Have a beautiful week. And now, hey, Claudia. How are you?
Hi. Can you listen?
I can hear you. I can. Shabbat shalom.
Can we hear Shabbat shalom? Can we hear first Betty? Because I think she came back with what she forgot the first time.
Okay, you want to? All right, let me bring her up then, and then I'll come right back to you. Betty, Clody said to go before you forget.
Oh my God. Well, I wrote it down so I won't forget. Clody,
right.
You're so sweet, darling. No, just one thing about the heart and living, I guess, not just with your mind, but being heart directed. Of course, your heart has to be educated. But I read a quote years ago. It was from the Rebbe, and he said that when you're studying the Torah, and to me, this can go for prayer or for anything, even with our conversations, don't just turn the pages. Let the pages turn you.
I love it.
And to me, that's putting those words in our heart. And when we do that, then we are actually, in a way, uncovering, exposing, maybe circumcising our own heart. And then that's when, because we're chasing after righteousness then. And to me, that's when God comes to us and goes ahead and finishes the job for us and writes the words on our hearts.
Yeah.
I'm thinking sometimes maybe that etching that he's doing, like he did on the tablets of stone, is maybe it's already begun.
Yeah.
In a sense. I mean, I hope it is. But that's really all I wanted to say.
Well, I'm glad it came back to you. Good insights, Betty. Thanks as always. I appreciate
You're
you.
welcome. It was not original with me, but it's something that
you
that
did a cover. Me. You did a cover job for what? Yeah, I got you. That's
you
all
betcha.
right. All right.
Yeah,
I love it.
And
I love your version.
Claudia, I like your new name, girl.
All right.
All right.
I'm ready. All right. You ready, Claudia?
I think I am.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. So I don't think I've got a very, very big point, but I really enjoyed your class today. I loved it. Thank you. And I just wanted to unite some points. I think that what is the most important in all of these discussions is what David Tyler said. What is law? What is law for us?
Yeah.
Because if we understand what is the law or what points does the law contain, then we understand that some things we can discuss and some things are beyond discussion.
Yeah.
So I think that circumcision is not the same as the seventh day. So that is why even Paul begins discussing on it, because you can discuss on the circumcision, as we were discussing yesterday on the diet, if we can be vegetarian, vegan, pescatarian, or whatever.
Right.
So we all have opinions or beliefs in what is good for each and every one of us. But if it's not inside the law, which for me are the 10 Commandments, then we can start discussing on them. Now, I really love how you put everything from the verse to the refrain to the songs to the covers and to the remake. And I think that I would like to go from that to love. And from love, I really thought of the 1st of Corinthians, how love is patient and love is kind, and so on. And I really wanted to say that I think that even Paul and Jesus and many of the academics and the scholars today are trying to unite, coming from a position of love. I think that the desire for power divides, and after division you can put your power. But if you start and say beyond this and beyond that, you don't like Paul for this, but Paul started all his discussions beginning from a position of love. He loved people and he loved people that love God. So he started to do all this to unite. So I think that is what is really important in today's class and in our mindset, because I also wanted, this is the last thing that I will say, I wanted to unite also this thought with the idea of forgiving our forefathers, because each and every generation comes with a trauma. You touched on this a little bit throughout the class, but every generation comes with a trauma inherited from the parents. If we continue to take this glass of trauma untouched from generation to generation, then it will become a really big pool of trauma. While if we try to understand where they were coming from and why they did this and what was their aim and how their whole position was something coming from love and from loving to build unity between people and a healthy relationship between human and God, I think that will set us in the right position for the next revelation from God. Yeah, thank you.
Hey, good stuff. And I tell you, I think kind of going a little bit off what you said, I'm also becoming more and more thoughtful of, look, everyone is not where we are, whatever that means, because we're in different places. So you're in a place and I'm in a place and Dave's in a place. And as long as we focus on, like you said, come at things from a position of love and acceptance as much as we can. I mean, look, there are people that I just can't walk side by side with because they don't even care about the Bible. You know, I mean, look, I have friends of mine, associates, acquaintances who are agnostic, who are atheist, who they're nice people. I mean, they're good, wholesome family people, but I don't have a lot in common with them. But when it comes to people of faith, my heart is attached to their heart. And if they believe in, you know, the 66 books of the New Testament, I mean, the whole Bible, the Christian Bible, and They believe in, I mean, I have people still to this day who call me and they'll say, hey, Ross, I got a question for you. Do you have a second? Yeah, sure. What is it? And they'll say something like, you believe in a pre-trib rapture or a post-tribulation rapture? And I'm thinking, my God, I haven't thought of that. But usually what I'll say is, well, let's talk about the different views. I'm happy to talk about the different views. A lot of times I'll say it's not really my interest right now, but I'm happy to discuss it. But I want to help people because I remember where I was. A lot of times I remember when I started doing, say, the Passover, but it was a Hebrew roots, we called it a Messianic Jewish Passover, where Jesus was killed on, all those things. I remember when I did that, and then I don't do that anymore, but when I see people do that, I watch other people point a finger at them and say, oh, that's bad. And what I'm thinking is, hold on, you were just doing that the other day. So I kind of want us to be, and I think this group is an excellent example. You brought it up. I think, Clody, to your point, if we can be gracious to people, if we can be a light, if we can set an example and we can help people along, a lot of people don't care what we think, but if they ask us, we can tell them. And I think maybe it helps a lot of people to hear from us. So I don't know. I'm pleased to be part of this group.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm ready.
I think there are much more people with any day passing that are searching for a kind of opinion that is in line with God's teaching. Because I don't want to say truth and nothing but the truth, but at least people that like-minded people that are searching for God. So yeah, we have to be ready every time to accept and to be a little bit of a guide. I agree with that.
Yeah, and one more point is that Jeremiah talks about set up sign road markers to help people back, and I know there's a context and the lost tribes are returning, but maybe I think some of you will relate to this. I think that's probably what a lot of this might be, is tribes are returning to themselves. Deuteronomy 30, when these things come to mind, literally in Hebrew, it's when you return to your heart. So these people who are scattered throughout all the nations, they were brought up as a Baptist or Pentecostal or Catholic or Presbyterian or whatever. I think this group of people, they're going to be in the church and they're going to turn and they're going to begin to look for the way back, and they're going to it's to their heart. Exactly. They're going to turn to their heart and they're going to face the way that God is calling them, and they're going to walk. Now, what we need to be, this group is fantastic for this. Don't be a jerk. We just have to be nice. We just have to help people and point them, so maybe setting up some of these road marks. In my mind, I think about doing, and I have a lot of ideas that I want to do. It's just a matter of time. But I'd love to do little short videos that help people. Have you ever considered this? And, I know my friend Ronnie Fulcher posts things all the time on his Facebook where he makes people think. A lot of people react wrong to his post because they think he's saying, I believe such and such. No, he's trying to help people to think about it. But that's what we need to do, is encourage people along the way and be there for them and just be nice, There's one more thing, and I'm going to let Nadine talk, but I saw it's in the Pirkei Avot, in the Ethics of the Fathers, and I'm not going to quote this exactly because I don't know it, but it's something to the effect that any discussion which is for the sake of the kingdom of God is worthy of having. Basically, in other words, you can disagree, but if you're disagreeing to be disagreeing, that's not okay. But if you're having a conversation where you're presenting different views, but it's for the sake of God's kingdom and discerning truth, that's what we ought to do. And that's what Seth and I are trying to create with Horeb, is how do we bring people to a discussion? So thanks for your points. Thank you, Clody. Nadine, how are you? Let me unmute. Let's see. Hey, Shabbat Shalom. How are you?
Good. Shabbat Shalom. Can you hear me okay?
I hear you perfectly. How are you?
I'm good. How's everybody? How are
Good.
you, Ross?
Good.
So I also love the class today. And I really liked your music analogy. They really resonated well with me, like this greatest hits and like the covers.
Right.
And so I like that. And it's kind of like, let's give credit where credit is due, you know, like where does that message originally come from? And in our household, we have a lot of Bibles, as I'm sure many of you do, in 4 different languages. We have Hebrew, of course, English, French, and Afrikaans. And the study Bible that I have, so the one that, you know, I take out for your classes, it's the ones that's like all marked out, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And that one does have the New Testament in it. So I did appreciate, I was able to kind of go from the New Testament into the prophets, back into Deuteronomy and the Torah. So I really like that, Ross. This was really nice. And then what it boils down to is, what is that message, right? So going back to the Shema, Deuteronomy 4 and 5, and then I had not kind of seen how Deuteronomy 6 that says, and these words which I command you today shall be in your heart, and how that connects to that verse just there. Like, I always kind of wondered, if I was to have a mezuzah, what would I put in it?
Right.
You know, and there's different traditions, and I think typically it's the Shema, but also some Deuteronomy 11 text that talks about putting these words on your doorposts. And some people say, well, it's the whole Torah.
Right.
And I've never had a mezuzah because I didn't know.
Yeah, what do you put in it? Right.
And I feel like you've helped me kind of narrow it down, which I feel pretty excited about. So I think it's verse 4 and 5 in Deuteronomy 6. But now I'm like, well, do I include Deuteronomy 6, 1 through 3 as well?
Oh, I know. It's so hard. It's so hard. You know,
What do you think?
I have thought the same thing. And I know that not everyone is familiar with the Moses scroll. You know, some people might have different ideas about that, or to some people, they don't even know what I'm talking about. But I would say this. Whenever I read that text, it reminded me of this idea, and the 10 words from the Moses scroll. I'm not suggesting those are what you put in your mezuzah, but hear me out. It's like you have this idea to love God. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and that's in the Moses scroll. And then you have this other passage in the 10 words of the Moses scroll that you don't hate your brother in your heart. Well, in the blessing and the cursing, the blessings and the curses, it says, blessed is the one who loves the Lord, who loves God, his God, and so forth, and then cursed it. So I thought about this, and obviously those passages from the Christian writings that I covered today, love God, love your neighbor. I mean, it kind of boils down to that. So your idea, just based on what we talked about in the class, Deuteronomy 6, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, and you shall, put these words on your heart. Love the Lord your God, put these words on your heart. One God, love the Lord your God. I would I don't think I would put it up now. Like, I have a mezuzah I have yet to mount on our new building because I'm having the same question as you. Like, how big do you make it to put everything you want in it? I have a Torah scroll here. Do I nail that to the door?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for a long time, I thought it was the 10 words, and I thought, I'll put the 10 words, but, I was never sure, so I never did it. And I don't know, I think you're helping me narrow it down.
Well,
and I also wrote today during class. So in my translation, it's with all your strength. And I think years ago I had like scratched that out and put might, and now I've scratched that out and put everything, which I also really like.
I love that because it's hard to translate, and that's why we get these different translations. And someone like you, who is a multilingual person, you know that sometimes we can't quite say in one language what another language is saying. And I mean, like people ask me, not that I'm an expert at any language, but they know I study Hebrew, so they'll say, well, what's the best translation? And it depends. It depends. Sometimes I read a verse that's very, very good. Sometimes I read a verse in a translation that's not good at all. So I don't know. But here, this Deuteronomy 6:4, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your everything. Keep these words that I'm commanding you in your heart. Recite them to your children when you're at home, when you're away, when you lie down, when you rise. Bind them as a sign on your hand, fix them as an emblem on your forehead, and write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. So I almost would say, here's what I would put. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your everything. That, it's funny that Jesus nails this. In the gospel text I read, he said, what words? These words right here. And I think that's the key. I really, really do. And really, if you say, that's sort of the Bible in a nutshell. And if you truly love God, you could expand that and you could go, well, how can you say that you love God if you don't love your neighbor? So, but really, that text says it all. I don't know.
I agree. Oh, man. Very exciting.
Hey, I agree too. And I think, this would make, Seth and I brainstorm about what would be some good, like little short videos, just lessons and this might be a really good one. What are the words that you ought to have written on your heart, and maybe go through this, and it's a 2-3 minute video, and little lessons like that are very powerful. One other point you made, Nadine, that I wanted to touch on, I have behind me a bunch of Bibles, and like you said, I have them different kinds. And I mean, if I was someone who really dressed, like nice, I could have one that matches every outfit, but I don't have many outfits, but so I'm in the same boat. But here's the thing. Now, it's funny. I remember I used to have a King James, and then a King James Study Bible, and then I might have changed translations. But then one day I said, I don't want the New Testament in my Bible anymore. I only want the Hebrew Bible, the Tanakh. And I did that for years and years, so much so that the first time I went back to carrying a Bible with the New Testament and with the Apocrypha, I felt kind of weird. Like I was like, should I be doing this? Should my Tanakh be bound with these other books? But for me, I'm in a place now where my teaching is going to incorporate some of these wonderful ideas like we did today. So I hope that people are okay with it. I'm glad you still had a Bible that had those texts in it. Otherwise, you'd have just had to trust me.
I do, and there's a lot of things that Yeshua says that I love, and they're highlighted. And some of the things you touched on today had already been highlighted.
Oh yeah,
so yeah. I've seen that connection, and I'm okay with that. I think I'm in a similar place where there's things to be taken. Like the foundation, is solid in the Torah, and then what is consistent, you're like, yeah, that's consistent. And what is not consistent, you're like, well, that doesn't seem to be consistent from my understanding at this point in time.
Yeah. One more thing that kind of goes along with this, and you can comment or others might as well. I think there's a tendency for all religious people, I know that's kind of a broad statement, but all religious people, we're looking for the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. And I have, let me use me. I don't know about you. I think all of us have done this. We get to the place where we go, okay, that was wrong, put that out. Okay, now I've got this. And then you go, oh, I'm not sure about that. Maybe this. And then you just keep whittling it down until, some have said, well, what do you want, Ross? Are we just going to go with this Moses scroll thing now and throw out everything? And well, no. What I believe, I love the entire Bible. And for a while, that had become just the Hebrew Bible for me. But, the more I think, I look at my religious journey, my spiritual journey, and so many things in this Bible that have led me to the place where I am. I'm not throwing things away. Now I'm looking for what are those consistent threads that I think bring us to a common ground, a common place. And I think it's important because I have people that are in this group of very talented, knowledgeable people of faith who are just the Hebrew Bible in Hebrew, and that's it, nothing less. That's all I'm going to do. And then I have someone who might join us next Saturday who says, I was just saved in a Baptist church and I love the Lord and I want to know, well, what do you do with them? You just tell them, well, I'm sorry, you're not going to enjoy this because this is an advanced class for people like Nadine and, me, and we're smart and you're not there yet. No, you open the door and say, come in. Let's talk about these things. So anyway, I think that's where I'm at.
Can I respond
sure.
to that, Ross? So I 100%, and I think this is why this group is so unique. And as you know, I'm also a researcher. I'm a scientist, and the way I see it is the truth is over there, and we can point to the truth.
Yeah.
So we read this and we're kind of like aiming that way, and then like, oh, we learned something new, and so now it's like, oh, we're aiming in that direction. But we never get to it. And it takes humility to be able to say we never get to it.
Yeah.
Because we need to keep our minds open. And so I find it very hard to trust somebody who says, I have it all figured out.
Oh,
For me, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
And there's so many teachers that have that approach to be like, oh, I have it all figured out. Let me tell you how it is. And that to me is like, oh, well, no, I don't think so, because I think there are still a lot of questions. And so it's very rare to find a teacher like you in this group, Ross, that is like, well, we don't know, and it's okay for us not to know and to be like uncomfortable in this position. And so I very value that. Like, this is, people ask me what I am. It's always a complicated question. And so I say, I'm a student of the Bible. I'm looking for the meaning of truth in life and how I can best, be part of God's kingdom on this place and just be as nice and kind as possible. And yeah.
You're nailing the main ideas. And, I think there's something about all of the people that I meet in this group, like I know that you do this for work in terms of scientific research. Many of us, we may not have that as a job per se, but I think those same skill sets are very important. In fact, that's what makes you such a good student, is that you have this mentality where you go, okay, let me put this hypothesis down and let me now test that. Jono often says, I know you've worked with him, by the way, but Jono says, let me throw things against this and see, will it stand up to criticism? Will it stand up to these different checks and balances? And for me, that's okay, but I do know that it's not comfortable for some people. Some people don't like that approach. They prefer that you just give it to them. Like, I don't want to see the math. I just want to know the answer, Nadine. Just tell me what it is. And you're like, that's no fun. It's like it's part of the thing.
So I'm a university professor, and I have a research group, right? So I study atmospheric chemistry, and part of my job as a university researcher is also to teach. So I teach first year chemistry. So this is 2,000 students, at the University of British Columbia.
Wow.
And that's what, that's what they're trained to do, right? Dr. Bordeaux, what's the answer? And I'm like, no, we've got to think about how we get to the answer. I'm going to give you marks on like how you get there. The answer's not that important. And then they're like,
yeah,
what's going on?
I get it.
And I it's a hard course to teach because there's so many people. But talk about the reach. Like in 4 years, I've already taught more than 1,200 students.
I get it. And that's a good feeling too, because you're training people on how do I get people to think about the path to answers rather than the answer. Like, how do you get there? And that's the fun part.
That it's chemistry or whatever it is. It's like, how you get there and the connections that you make along the way. So thank you.
Hey, good comments. Good fun. I appreciate you. Thank you very much. I see Todd and Angel are ready to jump back in the fray. There we go.
Hey
guys.
Just to carry on to what y'all were talking about, I've got the answers for everything.
I'm glad. That's why we're happy you're here.
But what y'all were talking about got me to thinking about what we personally experienced ourselves in the last church we were in. Is when we prayed for truth, for knowledge, and we started sharing with the pastor, on our little individual conversations about how we were getting stronger in the love of the law and the commandments. And it was just really unusual. Now that I think back on it, really kind of absorb it a little bit. It's really sad, the response that we got, because it was just kind of like, why? They're done away with.
Yeah.
It's like, if they're done away with, then why are we feeling so passionate about it?
Right.
And it's I don't know, it's just remembering back then just the expressions he would give us. And he's not a bad person. He really is.
I understand.
He's a pretty nice guy, but it was just really unusual. And then I guess we made him question his own belief system, and that's when, I've told you before, we started attacking us in the sermons.
Yeah, that's how you know you're making an impact, when they start.
A good one or a bad one?
Yeah, I don't know. Hey, it's funny, in the South, a lot of times instead of why, people say, why come? Why come? Why come this? Why come that? It's just a little slang.
How come?
How come?
Yeah, I used to do it a lot when I was a kid.
I was thinking that when you said that, I remember when someone asked me, "Why are you studying Hebrew?" I said, "Well, I want to get back to what it really said." And the person looked at me, and there's a group of people around. They said, "Well, why would you waste your time doing that? We already have the Bible in English." I mean, like I didn't know that. Oh, really? Well, I'd like to see that, because here I am racking my brain trying to figure out how to read Hebrew and Greek.
Yeah, we had the original translation. It was written in King James.
That's right. Or the King Josiah version, maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know.
There you go. Well, we were talking a couple years back when we were studying some stuff in the New Testament, and Yeshua always said, unless you are like little children, you can't inherit the kingdom.
Yeah.
We kind of figured out what he meant by that. What's the one thing little kids always do when you tell them something?
Ask why.
Why? Yeah. Why is that? Well, how come?
Yeah.
And that's what when you start following this, that's what you're doing. You're making yourselves like little children. Well, why is this? And why is that? And why is this? He wants you to ask questions. He wants you to think for yourself, he instilled that in us. But that's
right.
That's the whole thing. When you have it in your heart and everything, that's what you turn into a little child. You want to learn more. It's like, how come?
Yeah.
And everything else. So yeah, I just thought it was kind of interesting with that conversation you just had. So I just kind of want to add to it.
Good stuff. Hey, always.
In my infinite wisdom that I have.
I appreciate you sharing your brain with us, and I appreciate that Angel can sit there with a straight face as you say things like that.
Are you kidding me?
Hey, good stuff. Thank you, guys. Hey, Karen, let me click unmute. How are you, my friend? Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. So I thought I'd ask the uncomfortable question.
All right, wait. I can't hardly hear you.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's okay. Go ahead. I can hear you.
Oh, I said I thought I'd ask the uncomfortable question.
All right.
So why is the analogy circumcision?
Why is the analogy circumcision? I can see how you could be approaching this saying that's kind of strange. I don't know. Let me hear your take on it. That way, I can blame it on you. What is your thought there, really?
Well, living in today's day and age, I never thought about circumcision. It just never crossed my mind.
Yeah.
Until I'm sitting in the hospital with a 2-day baby boy, and the doctor asked me, "Do you want him to be circumcised?" This is 20 years ago, and my first instinct is like, "Circa what?"
Yeah.
And don't touch my baby boy, no way. And then I had to have a very long conversation with my late husband about it.
Right.
They're saying they can't. Need to turn my microphone. So, it was just, I think today it's hard to think about something because it's not a normal practice anymore, really. But if you look back in ancient times, hygiene practices weren't what they are today. You didn't have water piped into your house.
Right.
And in mostly warm climates are places that have these practices, where warm climates where they wear a lot of clothes. And
by the way, Karen, I don't mean to interrupt you. I can hear you, but your volume is low. I don't know if you can turn it up a little bit. I can hear you, but I don't want people to miss your points. And see if you can bump it a little bit.
I'm not sure how to bump my mic volume.
Okay. Well, that's a little bit better, and it might just be you're closer.
Yeah. Okay. So, it's possibly in the past they saw it as a breeding ground for bacteria and infection.
Yeah.
And over 100 years, 1,000 years, or whatever, they realized that removing it early on in life can, relieve a lot of pain.
Yeah.
Future, David says, "Create in me a clean heart." So, maybe they saw it as something unclean, like literally.
Yeah. Well, I will say that we do have evidence, and of course, evidence. What is evidence? It's really, a lot of people have done a lot of studies, but a lot of times studies are pushed by people who hold certain opinions. So you have to open up and look at different views. I have always, because I was predisposed or biased to the biblical text, been in favor of circumcision. And so therefore my research, Nadine, forgive me, was my scientific approach. I went out to prove what I already believed. But in this sense, I wanted to see, is there a reason scientifically for God saying that men should circumcise, or you should circumcise the males? And so that was my approach. And what I found was exactly what I looked for. The answer to that question, dear Ross, is yes, there is. And so what I found is that by removing the foreskin, that it certainly is associated with cleanliness, and even for the partner, that there is a reduction. Evidence shows this, at least in the studies that I read, that there is a reduction in certain cervical cancers or other cancers for the female partner. And so, it's clean for the man to keep infections, which he could then transmit, right? So that's always kind of been my view. And you think, well, I mean, maybe if the male would just cleanse himself, and that's a good point. You're like, come on, man, just take a bath or whatever. But I don't know. Maybe that's part of it, that in the ancient world, a lot of people say the same thing about diet. Why aren't we eating certain foods? Well, it was hard to get pork back in the day. It had, worms in it or whatever. Well, fire has always been hot, right? Cleaning has always worked. fire has always been hot. So I always wonder, is there a deeper reason? And now, so bear with me, I'm opening up my mind, thinking about, does this idea go back to God's instructions? I know people are like, uh-oh, here we go. Or is it a later thing that was good for people? Maybe they realized that people were getting infections and they said, we got to fix this. So, and it came about that way, as opposed to God saying, I need y'all to do this, right? So I've wondered which is it, because we do find in Moses, I touched on this and just blew past it, but in Exodus chapter 4, we get the idea that Moses didn't circumcise his son. You would think that would be very important. Moses would not skip that step, right? But he does. And then there's no circumcisions the whole time in the wilderness for 40 years. And you say, well, maybe that was just not mentioned. Well, it says in Joshua that Moses didn't circumcise anybody. So now we've got Moses 2 times where circumcision comes up and he didn't do it. And then it says he didn't do it. And then when you say, if Deuteronomy 10 and Deuteronomy 30 are Mosaic in origin, the only time he does mention it, it's a circumcision of the heart, has nothing to do with the male organ. So I don't know what I think right now, but to your point, if a person is not circumcised, I would want them, I would tell them, well, you better be circumcised because Passover's coming and you can't have the crackers if you don't, I have men that I've advised to be circumcised, and if they're listening, if any of you are listening, you're probably like, oh, you better not be saying I didn't have to do this now, after I went through all that, thanks to you. But I'm talking about adults that did it because I told them they should. But now I'm wondering, does that go back? And I know I'm kind of getting off the path here a little bit, but I remember when my oldest was born in a military hospital, they tried to talk me out of it. I don't know what they do now. That was 40 years ago almost. But now, what is the scientific world saying? Can I still validate the fact that it cuts down on cervical cancer? I don't know. What are the other studies saying? I don't know. I know I kind of beat around what are your thoughts, Karen, on any of that?
No, I think it was a learned thing, a learned behavior. As far as a lot of other things, we learn not to eat poison food. We learn not to, eat this plant or that plant. It's not in the Bible.
Yeah.
You shouldn't do that.
Right.
And so, and I think it depends on the climate you live in and your hygiene practices and how many partners you're going to have. And, I think the cervical cancer study was like studying men who had a certain amount of partners in their life. And, if they were not monogamous and they were not circumcised, then their partner had a 70% more likely chance of having cervical cancer.
Oh, that's a good point. I don't remember now. Like I said, in my past, a lot of times I've done research which I thought was unbiased and open and, willing to consider. But quite honestly, a lot of it was you sometimes see what you want to see. It's like people will look at something and derive from that the very thing that they're looking for. And quite honestly, I need to go back and look at some of these ideas and see. And let me just say, I don't mean to discourage people who say, well, Ross, I'm all for Genesis 17 is God talking to Abram and saying this. And look, that's fine. Believe that. But my point is that we have a couple of different stories, different sources, which don't necessarily say exactly the same thing. So, what do we do with that? I think we have to put it on the table and think about it. I think that's the only fair thing to do. So, but yeah.
I also think, like, in the beginning, let's say, we're running around in a tropical climate with no clothes on, then I think a foreskin is necessary. You need that protection.
Yeah.
but then, later as we evolve or whatever you want to call it, and you're wearing clothes, things change.
Yeah, thankfully we're there now where we wear clothes while we run around the tropics.
So people say, oh, the argument, well, we're made perfect. Sure, but things are different now. We're wearing clothes now. We didn't wear them before.
Right.
According to the text. So, yeah.
Let me add one more thing. Some of you know my friend Barry Page. Barry has written a couple of books. One of his passions is getting back to the original monotheistic Moses, away from myth and magic and later priestly additions. And I will say that Barry has made it very clear that circumcision of the flesh, as we're talking about it now, was a later priestly derived from Egypt and other cultures. And that's what he would say. He would say it's not Mosaic, and he even brings forward an argument. I'll have to look and see. It's not off the top of my head, but it's in one of his books where he talks about this, that the actual circumcision of the flesh is considered mutilation, cutting the flesh, which is forbidden in Deuteronomy. So what do you do with that? He says that is a direct violation, and he puts forward the argument linguistically. We do know, again, this is all stuff that would be interesting to study, but we do know that circumcision is not something that originated with the Hebrews. I guess in my naive state years ago, that only the Hebrews were circumcised and all the neighbors were uncircumcised. Like, because in my mind, I picture David saying, who is this uncircumcised Philistine that comes against, and I'm thinking Goliath is like, what the heck does that have to do with anything? You don't have to call me out like in front of everybody. It's just weird. It seemed, but there is this later Hebrew idea that I'm circumcised, you're not, and that becomes something which I think is interesting to look at in the ancient world. There's some weird stories in the Bible, let's face it. David, if you want my daughter, you're going to have to go beat these Philistines and give me 400 foreskins. That is odd. That is really, really odd. And according to the story, he does. And I was talking to Seth the other day about it, and you call it the hill of foreskins. And people are like, well, that's one hill I just don't want to be around. I mean, it's just weird stuff.
I was going to say one more thing.
All right.
So back when I was doing Pathway to Judaism classes, and one of the things, like the straw that broke the camel's back was the ritual. The question was brought, what do you do about a convert who's already been circumcised?
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, after they explained, I was like, no way, this is hocus pocus. I'm not,
Yep.
I'm not going to be part of this.
Yeah, you gotta draw blood. Yeah.
And I was like, no way, this is crazy. Anywho.
Yep. Yeah, and it's not like you can say, I already had that, I got it at the door, and I'm circumcised of heart. And they say, no, it's not good enough. Come in the back room. Yeah. Anyway, so not to discourage anyone, but good points, Karen.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry you couldn't hear me today. I'll have to figure out my settings.
That was God keeping your volume low because you're bringing up weird stuff.
Right.
Maybe next time you'll think about what you bring up, and then your mic will work better.
Okay.
All right, Karen. Eric John Nagel. How's it going, brother?
It's going well. How are everybody else is doing well, it seems.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. I was going to go back a few thoughts ago about you talking about folks who come in with, shall we say, baggage or predisposed inclinations or knowledge or whatever. Since I've been working with bees and honey for the last 2 weeks and another week at least coming up, has reminded me of a story when you accidentally bring some bees in with your frames and they're all stuck and covered with honey, they're going to die. But if you take them outside and set them down, because it's kind of hard for a human to wash honey off of a bee, the other girls, and they are all girls, will come over and clean that bee so that she's free.
Okay.
And it kind of made the sense of what we try to do here, at least in my eyes, is help people who have baggage sort through it, learn how to decipher it, and get cleaned up and get on a path that might be right. So there you are.
You know, Eric, it's funny. I know that you're a naturalist. You know, we're friends on Facebook and so forth, and I see all your beautiful pictures of your yard and nature. And so I know that about you, that you tend to enjoy the outdoors and working with God's creation. And I think if more of us could do that, we would be maybe aware of other pictures, spiritual pictures. You know, sometimes I think it helps to turn off the TV and go out in the yard and take in God's creation. So those are valuable lessons. I appreciate that.
And it you know, kind of alludes to these different ideas and who did what, said what, and everything else. Somebody's in charge of all of this.
Yeah.
We're really not in charge. And the more I age gracefully, I find out the less I know and the less I'm in charge of anything, that maybe everything from Christianity, Paul, Moses, the priests, perhaps someone orchestrated all that so we had something to do in the 21st century.
Yeah.
So don't put folks down that don't believe the way you do.
Yeah.
Because they might just have the right answer that you'll figure out in 10 more years.
Look, I tell you, I have been wrong way more times than I've been right. And that's what keeps me going. That's what keeps driving me, is I want to know. And I'm surrounded by people. The reason I love this group, people like you, is that you're also seeking. We're seekers, you know, and it doesn't matter that we don't all agree on every single thing. That's fine, because we're learners. You know, like Nadine said, you know, I'm a student. Look, I don't know what else you call me. I mean, people call me all sorts of things. I promise you, I've read it. But what I really am is a student. I'm a seeker. I want to know what I can know, and what I can't know, I want to be able to say, I don't know. I don't know. But I'm, you know, sometimes I'll say, not only do I not know, but I don't know and I don't care, or I don't know, or that's not my interest, or
I need to know that. Yeah.
I don't need to know. Yeah, I don't need to know everything. I mean, I jokingly always say that between my wife and I, we know everything. Like, I know the Bible, and pretty much from the beginning of time until, I don't know, about the 2nd century of the Common Era. That's what I know. And Bridget knows everything else. So, I mean, together we just have it all figured out. Now, that's obviously a joke, but the kids would probably say, well, that's probably true, because they don't call, no one calls me with like questions like, you know, important questions like, hey, I have this bump on my arm. What do you think it is? They call me and they say, look, I'm at work. I'm doing a crossword puzzle, 5 across, starts with the letter T, the law of Moses, Torah. Yeah, Dad, you're a genius. You know, that's the kind of questions I get. Everything else goes to Bridget. So,
amen.
All right.
Thank you.
Hey, man, I appreciate you. Leslie and Gary. Hey, how's it going? Let me unmute you, my friend. How are you, Leslie? Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom, Ross. We're doing fairly well.
Good.
An interesting comment you made earlier. I'm going to touch on the circumcision question that Karen brought up.
Okay.
And you talked about how you feel, you know, should I feel weird that I'm carrying around a Bible that has the Apocrypha and the New Testament in it?
Yeah.
I was raised Catholic, so that was my original Bible.
Yep.
And when I was an adult and accepted my faith again, the person who took me to the Bible store bought me, of course, a Protestant Bible. And I was like, what happened to Maccabees and what happened to Judith and what happened to Tobit? I remember, right? I remember those books. If you do history on circumcision, circumcision as we know it today is not what was done in ancient times. And there's a story in, I want to say, in one of the books of Maccabees, where the Israelites got upset because some of their people group were pretending that they could go into the Greek theater and be Greek.
You're right.
Well, as we know circumcision today, that's impossible. But with only part of the foreskin removed, it's absolutely possible.
Well, you're teaching me something here, because I have read those sources and I'm thinking, what is this about? So you're saying that it is a different procedure with different results then?
Yes, and that allowed the false Greekness, if you will, to be carried out.
Yeah, because I would think that once you're circumcised, that ship has sailed.
But not in days past.
I got you.
And it was actually on a Catholic website that I found the explanation, diagrams included. And what I'll find it again and post a link to it, I think, in the Facebook group or in the Discord group. Maybe the Discord group would be better.
Yeah, just put PG-13 and these are drawings, right?
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they are.
Right.
They're drawings explaining the difference. So when you look into that aspect, and I have grandchildren now who are not being circumcised by their parents, who are circumcised.
Okay.
Because the whole discussion that's going on within our culture now about how that's harmful. Yeah. Right?
Yep.
And then to have known people in the course of our lives who have been uncircumcised. My husband and myself, my father-in-law was an example. My father-in-law was not a circumcised male. We cared for him to the end of his life. It became Gary's responsibility to help him with those aspects of hygiene.
Mm-hmm.
So we got the picture.
Right.
And Gary's sitting here having difficulty wondering about, the
whether you
discussion
should
we're
keep
having
talking
today.
about it. Yeah.
Right. Well, just because it's like, okay, for me, it's not true. And we do have all kinds of medical, clinical studies revealing benefits to the way it is now.
Right.
But looking at it historically, you get into those aspects of cleanliness that are just so crucial to the fullness. I don't know if that would help Karen, that we've gone a lot farther.
Yeah.
So
it's a subject that plays into the biblical text. And I know that in the ancient world, it certainly was a major part. Like I said, we have drawings in other cultures, Egyptian, other ancient Near Eastern culture, drawings that are shown. I've seen several of these myself. So we know that it was a practice. What we may not, or I may not know that you're now saying is you can go find this information, you could post it, is what was that in the ancient world? Because I have read those texts where they were basically, and there's even a Greek word for it, you undergo an undoing of the circumcision, and they would go in the gymnasium, those little gymnasiums that there was high class, to go in the gymnasium. But if you were circumcised, people would make fun of you, I guess. I don't know. I wouldn't be part of a gym that did that. But anyway, that's just me. I don't know.
Right.
Hey, look, tell Gary I'm sorry you brought all this up, but it's Hey Gary, good to hear your voice, man.
Yeah, good to hear you too.
You guys enjoy a wonderful day together.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next time we get a chance, we'll run around the world together. We'll try to do that again.
How we do
Yes.
do that for sure.
All right. Hey, love you guys. Y'all have a beautiful day. Thanks for your comments, Leslie. Good to hear you. All right. Hey, you have been with me for a couple of hours today. We went long. We didn't go long last week. We went long today. We're going to work on a couple of things that we'll announce later. Look, I did want to say, first of all, I'm going to post in two places. I'm going to post in the Zoom call a link to the Bible that I recommend if you want a Bible, as Leslie and I were just discussing, with the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, the New Testament, and the Deuterocanonical books, as they're called, Maccabees and so forth. That link that I just posted, the New Oxford Annotated Bible with Apocrypha. Now, that's the leather edition. It's a little bit expensive. They also have, you could go there, and then if you don't want to spend that much money, you could say, well, give me the hardback because it's cheaper. But it's the same. I just like the leather version. But anyway, that link will take you to it, and I encourage you, if you want one of those. I'm not saying that every week I'm going to be going, oh, flip to Matthew, but I might say go to Maccabees. I'm going to teach whatever I feel inspired to teach that I think brings this point home. By the way, I see, Valerie, I'll call you up in just a moment. I'm looking forward to what you say. And but anyway, that book, that Bible is something that you might be interested in. Let me see. Sela Torah is Valerie. Valerie, let me see if I can hear you. How are you, my friend? I'm glad you made it. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. I'm so happy I made it too.
Look,
I'm very
hey, it's perfect.
talented.
It's perfect. I hear you. Good.
Okay, great. Okay, what Leslie was saying, I had heard many years ago, and also I had heard in modern day times that a lot of angry men that were angry about their circumcision were getting something done to pull skin over to make it look like they're uncircumcised. I just wanted to share that. That's all.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good. And God bless those angry men. If you're that mad that you're going to go to that extreme, I hope you get happy some other way. Hey, good stuff though. Thanks for all your comments. Betty, all right. Everybody's just jumping in. One more. Betty, I see your hand raised. Let me unmute you. Yes. There it is. I got you.
Okay. Just a really quick thing.
No more circumcision stuff.
No.
I'm joking. Go ahead.
Absolutely. I'm done with that.
All right.
For today. But thanks for all the comments. I've been educated in ways I never dreamed that I would be.
All right.
Anyway, no. Those of you who know me know that I like to follow the Jewish calendar, and today is especially significant. Day. It is the 18th of the month of Elul, and as you know, Ross, I know you know that 18 in Hebrew is associated with life.
Yep.
And so I just think this is a very special day, and we had a very special lesson on the key to life, which is love.
Yep.
Loving God with all our hearts and loving our neighbor as ourselves, which means that we have to love ourselves, whether we like ourselves or not sometimes. But I like to follow the days. I think it's important. And I just happened to notice that it was the 18th. So
beautiful.
Share that.
Very good. No, I appreciate that.
That really is all. I'm done. I think 3 times is a charm. I've raised my hand 3 times. I'm done. So
good deal. Well, so let me wrap things up here. And I wanted to say, of course, it's Sabbath, but I did want to bring up, since I have our core group here, most of you are on our newsletter. So you get our weekly newsletter, which we intend to send out on Thursdays. This week, I had some situations going on, and so I was really behind But Seth bailed me out. We sent it out Friday. It will be every week. That's our intention. God willing, we'll send that out. And we'll have links in there for any of the classes, any of the videos, any of the interviews, things that are going on with Horeb. Most of you know that, what we're dealing with and what we're doing is setting up Horeb Institute. You'll hear me in the mornings on Saturday. I talk about Horeb Institute. My books are published under Horeb Media. We've decided that we're doing everything we can. Seth and I are trying to put more information out there, more materials. You saw this week in the newsletter that we even have a store. I don't want to be, and Seth doesn't want to be, we're not trying to beg for money. Everything we do at no charge. And the only reason that we're providing those things is it gives people who want to support, who can financially support, other things that they can get. So you'll see a couple of T-shirts and some coffee cups. I had Seth design this, and we've got different things that we're putting together. So if you choose, you can check out the store. The links are in the newsletter. If you're not part of the Yachad, you can support what we're doing. But just to let you know, because we put all that in the newsletter, we love the fact that you're part of what we're doing anyway, whether or not you're able to contribute or not. And we appreciate your time. We thank you for being part of it. We just love the fact that you're our good friends and that you put up with us and you stick around, even sometimes when you don't agree with me. I'm sorry about things like Karen and Leslie brought up. I can't control other people, but join us next week. Shabbat Shalom, Shavua Tov. Have a wonderful week, and I look forward to everything coming up in the next several days. Stick around. It's going to get fun. Have a beautiful one.